Hello and welcome to the Local Farmers on Small Properties webinar tonight. And we're lucky enough to have two local landowners, Lewis and Barry, who are going to talk us through what they're doing on their property. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. For me, it's the Dja Dja Wurrung tonight, and I wish to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and anyone that's watching this. Pay my respects to the land that you're watching this on, and also pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are watching this event. So as I stop sharing, and I'll ask Lewis to kick things off this evening, and I'm sure Lewis will share the size of his property and what he's been doing. Over to you, Lewis.
Thanks, Jason. Yes, so here's a picture of our property here, the 7 acres from 3 years ago, and I think it's almost 3 years to the day that Jason first visited here. Seems like yesterday. A lot's happened, but the time's gone quickly, and I suppose 3 years is not long in the regen world, and I have to say I think patience is an important virtue, but also that it's been a really fun journey through this 3 years. In the 7 acres here, we've got about 2 hectares of grazing land, which is this 0.5 hectare paddock. You can see the sheep walking through, and a 1.5 hectare paddock there with the hay in it. And this, basically, the previous owner had taken hay every year for at least 20 years, I think. And during that time, he'd keep the sheep in the small paddock. So you can see that the pasture really has been grazed pretty hard. And also, one of the key weeds that is quite noticeable is the bent grass, and that has been something that we've been battling for some time. I can get this to move down to the next slide. So when I first joined, took over the place, I think sat back and thought about our aims, and really our objective was to grow as much food as we can off the property, or at least source as much as we can locally. And so for the pasture, that meant I wanted to keep a house cow and a calf and a small handful of sheep. And really the aim would be to have enough good pasture to support these animals year round. So I first spoke to a consultant who came in and said, "Look, let's do this the so-called traditional way, which was to re-establish the pasture." And that meant removing the stock from the property, getting your broad herbicide out, round up and kill all the pasture, and then reseed some better grasses. And then the other option was, after speaking with Jason, who was very charismatic and encouraging about regenerative agriculture, was to take I guess a more a slower approach and use the stock and learn some good grazing skills, animal management skills, and learn how to look after the pasture and let itself regenerate. So, and that is the option I chose. Then came the investment stage, I suppose, and that meant investing in some portable electric fencing and setting up a water system so that I could have essentially some portable water supplied around the paddock, around those two paddocks as we moved the stock. So I went for the Gallagher fencing, which is a multi-wire system. You can buy those in 100-meter lengths, and it's so-called smart fence, and it is quite intuitive, where it has a ratchet drag system so that you can always wind in those 4 wires equally, and there's never any issue with getting the fence back and into the rolls there. And an energizer with that as well. And then on the watering side, we decided to put 40mm pipe around the perimeter of those paddocks and put in some quick clips. And I bought I think it's a 200-litre trough to go with that, which I essentially hook up using a garden hose off that main line. I'm lucky enough to have a bore on the property which this water is coming from. Just looking at my notes here. So the next step was really to train the sheep. That turned out to be much easier than I realised, and I was anticipating. Basically, I took that small paddock, the 0.5 hectare paddock, and then just started fencing the sheep off into half of that, and gradually made it smaller and smaller, and found out, in fact, they're very, very well behaved, and they seem to enjoy very much lining up to be let into the next section every day. And then with a bit of guidance from Jason, we used, I guess, decided that a 200 square metre per day was what we wanted to be grazing each day, and that was to allow 90, 100 days to recover. And that was essentially the figure that I took for at least the first couple of years, before nowadays, where I take a little bit more, you get a bit more sense of how fast and how slow, or how much you should be taking each day. In terms of the effort required, most of the shifts are really you can be quite efficient by setting up the energizer in a center point with the trough there, and then moving the paddocks around that center point. And so basically daily, you really only need to set up a new fence and not shift either the trough or the energizer. So that would mean typically I have 10 minutes or so doing that. If it's a bigger shift, then it takes me up to about 30 minutes to do that. Look, and the other key thing about the whole grazing is that you can adapt it to whatever your schedule is. And if you're going away for a couple of days, you can just fence off a proportionally larger area. And we've been away for 10 days or so and just fenced off a big area. And as long as you've got your electric fence working well and someone checking on the water, then it's pretty much look after themselves. Typically, I don't leave the water, I don't leave the trough under pressure. I just fill it up daily and monitor that. And when we go to shift it, try and arrange it such that the cow and sheep have had a good day on that, so that it's really usually not more than half full, easy to empty and move on. So that all sounds pretty easy, but of course the challenges are for me have been around some of the extreme weather situations. We've had 2 wet winters and now a wet summer. The first wet winter was pretty tough because I really didn't have much shelter set up for them and wasn't really used to looking after the animals in that situation. So as a result of that learning, I've set up this mobile system, which can be shifted much easier downhill, but can be shifted by one person uphill. Okay, and that provides some sun protection and also wind protection as well. But typically on events like we've had in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, and any particularly hot days or bad weather, I bring the cattle, I shut down the system and move them into an area where there are trees and even around the house, because we don't do much mowing around here. It's mostly done by the animals. And they get a much more protected area around the house where we've got good mature trees and shade. Yeah, the other thing about, of course, is in those wet weather areas at times that you do have to watch trampling as well. So if you've got the stock on your good pasture, which is much more sensitive, I find, then it's a good idea to keep an eye once the wet weather comes and maybe move them to avoid any damage. The other challenges are more around, for me, have been around the springtime, and you can see in that picture there how the grass has got away, basically, and it's taller than the sheep and halfway up Milo the cow's legs there. The first season, I just wasn't able to keep up at all with that, and we baled hay. So we had a whole lot of nice 30 round bales of hay, which have been great support since then. Not the most amazing hay because it sat out in the weather most of that time, but did certainly provide helpful support during both the winters and the summer. And then the next year, essentially, instead of baling hay, again, I couldn't keep up. I decided to buy 3 more cattle. And that really put us cat among the pigeons and threw a spanner in the works. So they did an amazing job of mowing down the grass, but then again, once we moved onto sensitive pasture, things got easily damaged and trampled, and so that's something I'm much more wary of now. I still have those cattle. I have to basically farm them off once the spring grass is grown, and got some helpful neighbours that support that, and then bring them back in November or August, September, and November to do their job again. And that's what I did in this last year, and that worked pretty well. The other thing to help smooth things out is increasing the rate that you get around the paddock. So daily shifts became bigger areas, and that helps smooth this fast growing and this really incredible summer we've had for pasture. This is a typical summer though, where we've got a lot of dead grass and not much of the perennial showing there. And that's the sort of areas that we need to look after. And I think that's a critical time to be watching grazing when it's like that. So it's definitely much more fun, I think, than getting your, this approach to farming is much more fun than getting your roundup out and killing everything and starting again. We really have identified some progress. You can see in this picture, well, I can see now as a result of learning a bit more about grasses that you can see the bent grass with the drier stalks on it. And this area in here where the cattle have, the cows and the sheep have been in here for about an hour. They've gone around preferentially grazed, and you can see the areas they pick out are the areas that are breaking through, I think, the bent grass with better grasses, or at least other grasses. So I think we are gradually seeing some non-bent, more non-bent species appearing. And that's really promising, but again, I think we just need to be patient, and it will take more time to get where we want to go. That is basically all I have. So I'm going to, I think Jason has gone firefighting, is he, or something?
No, no, I haven't. Thanks, Lewis, very much. Yeah, and I think what I can also see in this photo that you're showing there is some of the trees that you've now planted in behind there.
Yeah.
So yes.
Oops, sorry. Yeah.
So there's
yeah, so there's more trees coming up, and more to come in addition to that as well.
And then hopefully the shelter shed there won't be required, because they'll always have access to some sort of shelter across the paddock. Just a quick question. So you said right at the start about 2 hectares. So what are you running, about 12 sheep and 2 cows the entire season, and then
six sheep the entire season, and generally 6 lambs for half a season, or half a year.
Yep. And a couple of cows, cow and a calf.
And a couple of cows year round, yeah, is the plan, and then bring in more cows for the fast growing season.
And that's all just on 2 hectares. Bought in feed, what do you buy in?
Well,
From
I've
just
been using that hay, and then supplementing the milking cow with some high protein pellets. Not through this last several months, just a slight taster, but in the winter months, that tends to be more important.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. There's any more questions, we'll wait until the end, and then you can type those questions in. Over to you, Barry.
How's that? We good?
Good to go.
Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you. Lewis, that was good. That'll certainly make them appreciate your presentation a fair bit better than the one you're about to receive, but that's okay. That's okay. We're on 40 acres, which we bought in July 21 in Pipers Creek. Undulating basalt country. It was part of a 110 acre block of land split up into 3 titles, the owner of which had never lived, I think, ever. They'd bought this property, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, local people with a few properties. And what that meant, of course, was the property just digested people's cows and sheep. That meant that every fallen tree and every fallen branch in the last couple of decades was still sitting out here in all the paddocks. It also meant that it had been grazed heavily, and it was absolutely covered in bent grass primarily. We have a mixture of Scotch thistles, we have some pine trees, we have not a lot of gorse, and we have hawthorn bush as well. Okay, so all of those things. So So there's been a massive cleanup on it, and all of that, and still ongoing. We still haven't got to it. We have 7 paddocks, which range in size from about 3 acres to 7 acres. And then when we're doing selective grazing aspects of it, we use electric fences. We use a Kiwi Tech fencing system with we've got 2 or 3 different energizers, including a Gallagher, which I've found to be best compared with the is it Thunderbolt, Thunderstar? Oh, I forgot. Yeah. Anyway, there are other brands out there.
Thunderbird.
Thunderbird, that's the one. Yeah, thanks. The idea is, as Lewis was talking about here, is to improve the soil and pastures through intensive grazing. So the way we've been doing that is we've been to try and see if we can have some impact on what was here. We've basically been using three paddocks, which are 4 acres, 2 acres, and 6 acres, and they're the ones that we will do the strip grazing in, and we are currently experimenting with making the grazing areas much smaller and therefore more intensive. Sorry, I haven't mentioned the stock that we've got. We've got about 80 sheep, and they are wilty poles, which mean they are shedders. They don't need shearing or crutching, purely for meat. And we have 3 cows, one of which will be eaten in 6 months' time. Okay, and we have 2 other cows. Jenny was milking for a while. We're not milking at the moment. They will be probably getting pregnant again in around May. And the milking may come back on.
Milking will come back on. I've got all the infrastructure.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. So what are the things that I can tell you? Where the electric fencing thing and going a bit harder. So over 2 years, we've found that we're moving. We've managed to, and not a lot, but we've managed to get some clovers to rise to the surface. And if we look at the surrounding paddocks of neighbours, we can see numerous changes taking place with other grasses that I'm not sure what they are, that they still have, that we used to have, that we no longer have. So we are persevering with the intensive grazing aspect. Now, one of the things that sometimes, and I do notice this because we do push the animals fairly hard, and that sometimes comes at a cost of condition to them if they're eating bent grass, and they will knock it down. But that's why I'm going to the smaller, harder grade strips to try and improve that. In speaking to Sam, and I note what you were saying, Lewis, we are thinking about taking one of these paddocks, a 6-acre paddock, and actually spraying it out and putting a winter crop in it mixture. I spoke to Sam about one day about going just straight into grasses, but he suggested it probably takes 2 or 3 years before you would do that. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, Jace, but that seems to be a common thread. So that's something that we're thinking about trialing. What that also means is we have enough room that if we need to go away something, we can just push all of the animals into a larger paddock. And we haven't, sorry, I haven't mentioned, we do have water. We've run pipe with I'm not sure the correct name for them, but people call them bayonets, which are the plug-in into the hose system. So we have a 200 litre trough and a 100 litre trough, which is really handy, easy to pick up and move around, that kind of thing. So we use those, and those hoses haven't been buried. They've been run around the fences, and there's some of the paddocks I haven't got to as yet. We haven't got to as yet, but it's pretty easy to get to those. Feeding those, we have a bore which pumps into not a very big, but it's a 9,000 litre tank which is up on a stand, and from there we can gravity feed to any area on the entire property. Although in one paddock we do have a large dam if we need to put them in there. That's a bit of a problem because it's a boundary paddock, and at this point in time we still haven't put in a boundary fence. So that's one area of issue that we have to address. The other paddocks are the same. The bigger paddocks, and I come back to say that really we're trying to focus on seeing if we can make impact on the three smaller paddocks, or on three smaller paddocks. So we've got a bit of a system there, and I can put I can because each of those paddocks then gets divided up through the electric fences. I can determine how wide or how narrow I wish to go, or how hard we wish to go. Now, all of this comes, if I'm going too hard, all of it comes at a bit of a there's some downside for the stock involved in this, and we will bring in hay. So there's the balance there about how hard we go on what's not great pasture, and we'll bring in hay. And last year in winter we'll bring in lucerne to help. Most of the paddocks, especially two of them, have got good shelter, and one of them has a big shed in it, as well as some well-established old gum trees, manna gums and pine trees, and the hawthorn bushes as well. We haven't made a big move in getting rid of the hawthorn bushes. We will over time, but in the interim, I noticed the stock will eat them if they've been cut down, and if they're low and new growth. So we have been cutting them, and I've been using the branches to form barricades and planting trees and shrubs inside those barricades, which seems to work quite well. Coming back, Lewis, you mentioned that your sheep are quite well trained. Well, the wilty poles, one of the beauties about wilty poles is that they are great mothers. They'll often have twins and triplets and quads, and even I've had a cousin who's had twins over the years. They are good mothers, and the good mothers have complete disregard for electric fences. They just put their heads under them and go through, and train their children to do the same thing. And of course, so that means they're off getting the best pick, and they're generally in pretty good nick, the ones that can get through the electric fence. Fortunately, the majority of the sheep and the cows will be contained by the electric fences. In fact, most times I don't even have to turn the thing on. I can just put up the fences, and I only use 2 wires pretty much these days. And that'll keep them in, because the ones that are going to go through them, I can have 15 wires and they'd still go through them. So they've beaten me in that regard. I'm not sure where that'll all finish up, but that's where we're at the moment. But the take home from us is I'm going quite hard in certain areas to try and make a change to eradicating, or getting rid of the bent grass, or replacing the bent grass, should I say. But we will probably trial spraying out and sowing out a paddock to see how that works.
And can I just butt in there?
Yep.
Barry's saying we will. So that with our 3 paddocks, we'll have 2 paddocks, which are basically 5 or 6 acres, which we would have gone hard in moving the stock for 2.5 years or so. And then we will have a similar kind of area in our 3rd paddock where we've attempted to go hard, but we've decided that we'll spray it out spend 3 seasons and then plant out with perennials, and we'll have a pretty good trial on which is the most successful, whether we spend 6 years, 6 or 7 in electric fences, moving the stock, or spray out the bent grass and go through the process. So it'll be interesting to see what we end up with, because the 3 paddocks are basically started off in the same condition and are fairly similar in how much shelter they've got. Yeah, they're very similar paddocks. So be interesting to see this trial and what other people think as we move into this area.
Good controlled study by the sound of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Give us 6 years on the bent grass.
There, small c on the word control there. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's
pretty much it. But if there's any questions, I'm quite happy. Love to answer questions.
I'll just before we go on to that, I'll just share my screen. You may know this place, Barry. I hope you don't mind me showing.
No. I'm trying to recognise.
But they're good-looking stock. Who
Yeah.
who are those farmers?
So a few things to point out here before we go. There's a trough sitting up over here, but there's also a trough in here that you'll see. This is Barry just moving the stock, and they're happy to move, although there's all these people here. And I like what's happening with these couple of sheep here. If you watch through, I hope you can see my arrow as I push play. So one jumps over the fence to go back.
Yeah, that's right. He didn't want to miss out on the move. That's Harry the Rab, and I could put up an 8-foot bloody fence and he'd go over it.
So yeah, so that's just how simple it is to move, and then you just pull it back. You've got your 100-litre trough there by the look of it.
Yep.
And your energizer here.
What I do, Jace, is when I do things like that, I'll just move the last panel of electric fence to one side of the trough or the other side of the trough, and then move it every second row, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So instead of attaching it here where it was, attach the fence to just here.
Yeah. And then the next time I will move it. And I've got, as I said, I've got bayonets down the lines that are along the fence. Yeah.
So, and with the shelter belts that we've put in this particular paddock, Barry's fenced off 3 sort of bays, and they're four plants wide in there, so that we can still get the electric fences in. It's a bit more fiddly, I suppose, and if we had have thought about it, and when we do the next area, we'll probably do it a bit differently, but it still works.
Yeah,
it's still manageable. It might take an extra 5 or 6 minutes just to thread the electric fence through the fence that surrounds the trees. Yeah,
I don't seem to have I don't mind the amount of time, whatever it takes, because I just walk the wires out, and I can just see what's going on, and check out the sheep and the cows and all that kind of stuff as well, because the cows will be hanging around all the time.
Yeah, I think my problem is I enjoy it too much. Well, my family's problem is that I enjoy it too much. So.
I don't have that problem. I don't have that problem. I'm pretty happy with him out there.
Yeah, Jenny wants to buy a paddock that's 25 mile long.
And so we do water.
So thank you very much for that. And I appreciate all the work that you've put into presenting, and I'll stop the recording now. Thanks for joining us.